Okay, so this is take 2 because I tried starting the recording, but apparently there was no sound coming from my mic. So I'm going to go over at least one SCOTUS decision that came out today, specifically the one regarding trans athletes in sports. States can ban transgender athletes from participating in women's sports, says the Supreme Court. One of the biggest issues of our time, of course, definitely goes above, cost of living crisis, and the deficit and the oil shortage going on due to Trump's war in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran, I should say, regarding the Strait of Hormuz. It's just like, sarcasm aside, like, what's going on with this? You know, I don't give a shit about women's sports. I really don't. I don't give a shit about any sports, to be real with you. But, like, women's sports, like, I used to care about men's sports. I have never cared about women's sports, okay? And neither do the people who make the decisions based upon this. Just so you know. This is only about shitting on trans people. That's all it ever was. Let us begin.
I want to go to Stephanie Liebergen now. Steph, you have a decision that just came out. What can you tell us?
Yeah, it's one of the decisions relating to transgender athletes that we were waiting for. This one, the first one that came down out of West Virginia. This was the case of a 15-year-old transgender girl who wanted to participate in middle school sports, but West Virginia, one of the states that has a ban on transgender participation in sports.
15 years old.
Opinion, now mind you, these are lengthy opinions, and I've just been able to do a quick glance at this point, but it does appear like the Supreme Court is coming.
Always ask right-wingers who their favorite top 5 women athletes are. Even that misses the point, because I've talked to some TERFs who like are able to name like women's sports athletes, and so if they can name them, then it just destroys your point. But like you can pull that one out for sure if you're talking to some conservative, for sure, and then they'll be like, well, that's not the point. It's about, fairness in women's sports. It's like, you never gave a shit. You never cared about fairness in women's sports. If you really want fairness, how about we pay women's sports equivalently to how we pay men's sports? Why are there no women's NBA players who are like millionaires? I don't think there are. Correct me if I'm wrong. They certainly don't, even if there are, they certainly don't make as much as the men do. So if you want fairness, how about we start with that?
In favor of the state of West Virginia and against that 15-year-old athlete, with the Supreme Court saying that Title IX does allow states to segregate sports and activities by the biological sex,
separate but equal,
male and female, and not necessarily.
I'll die on this hill. There should not be separate men's and women's sports. Separate but equal is stupid, no matter how you do it. The only reason the separation exists for a lot of sports, as some of us know, is that there were women competing way back in the day. I think that archery was an example of this. There are a few other examples that I can't think of off the dome. I think baseball was one, actually. Like, the men were getting embarrassed that they were losing to women. And so that's why a lot of sports are segregated into men's and women's categories. Like, it's not for the protection of women. Make no mistake.
Really allowing students
it's to protect the feelings of men.
Off their gender identity. Again,
shouldn't even be separate bathrooms. I honestly agree. I think that bathrooms should be collapsed and integrated into one.
This is a big case. This was one of 2 transgender athlete cases that we were waiting for the court to rule on. And in this case, you do see the court reference both the Idaho case and the West Virginia one in what they sent down this morning. But it appears that they did rule that Title IX allows schools to provide separate women's and men's sports teams defined by biological sex. And West Virginia has...
What does that mean? What does biological sex mean? What are we referring to? They can never answer this question. The closest I've ever gotten to a consistent answer is like the Mullerian versus the Wolffian pathway, which like I only know, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. I only know about that because of transphobes. Transphobes are the only people who give a shit about like the Mullerian and Wolffian pathway. They can't like what can I point to on somebody? What one thing or multiple things can I point to and measure or observe that would indicate that they went through either the Mullerian or Wolffian pathway? And they can never answer that. If you set somebody down in front of me and I can do whatever tests I want on them to determine whether or not they are male or female, what am I looking for? What am I looking for? And inevitably what you end up getting is like a vague collection of traits that would land them somewhere on that spectrum, right? You can make a vague determination based off of that, but like then you have people who are female who don't have uteruses, who are still identified as female. You have people who are male who somehow have XX chromosomes. right? When you get right down to it, it's a lot more complicated than just, oh, the biological sex is just biology.
Permissibly maintained female sports for biological females consistent with Title IX.
Males with breasts, that's a common one.
Law that prohibits sex discrimination at schools or activities that have some kind of federal funding.
It's enforcing sex discrimination. It's reinforcing it.
This is going to be a win for the 27 states across the country that have some kind of ban on transgender youth participation in sports. Again, we need to dig into this ruling just a little bit more to kind of read the nuance and the context and see how narrow or broad the Supreme Court is.
Take a look. Aaron Reed, which we'll go over in a second, has a much better map on this, but take a look right here, and this will just give you a vague outline of like where it's safer to be trans than not.
In this ruling, but certainly at first glance, this
unfortunately,
is a win for the state
shrinking.
of West Virginia and presumably for the state of Idaho as well. Those two cases that were heard earlier in this term, and a win for the conservative arguments and for those that argue that transgender women and girls should
It's not a win for the arguments. It's a win for the people who are trying to shove this down our throats. It's not a win for the arguments, though. Like, a good argument has not been made for this.
Be playing on sports teams with girls, with biological girls and women, Holly.
And Stephanie, let me ask you.
Even the newscasters, by the way, are like fucking up the language. It's not biological girls and women. That doesn't exist. The concept of girl and woman is completely sociological.
About another case that we're also waiting the outcome on campaign finance. Can you give us more information on that one as well? I think this one's the one least talked about, but is also going to be very important, especially in the upcoming presidential elections in 2 years.
Absolutely. So this case was focused on how much political parties and candidates can spend when they're coordinating.
Even the Bible's original translation of the creation of man and woman doesn't include that from the rib of man shit. Yeah, I'm not big on like biblical arguments either.
With each other. Currently, there is a limit. There's a dollar limit that is escaping me at the moment of exactly how much parties and candidates can contribute.
That was the other one.
Can spend when they are coordinating with each other.
That was the other one. They removed they basically eliminated the limit which like can be spent. They didn't exactly do it. I was listening to the Majority Report this morning, so if you want better information on this, please by all means go check them or somebody else. But basically what they did is made it so that the parties can now fund candidates as much as they want.
Argument before the Supreme Court was that limit violates the First Amendment. Now, if this limit is lifted, in theory, we could see even more congressional spending. We could see even more campaign spending, which could raise the cost of our elections even higher than they already are. So this, while it is, as you mentioned, Holly, more of a lesser followed case, it's maybe a little bit more in the weeds. It's
really funny to me because what I've noticed is that the more money is like lately, it's been like the more money is spent from like PACs and shit on a campaign, the less likely they are to win because they have to like disclose, oh yeah, money's coming from this place and that place and the other. Whereas if it's grassroots funded, people know that, like, people can smell that shit and they're like, oh, that's more authentic. I like that one.
For the average viewer watching us on a Tuesday morning, it is a decision that could have a big impact, and that's another one of the major 4 decisions we were waiting for the court to rule on today. But so far, just that West Virginia transgender athlete case that we've gotten so far. But Avajoy and I are both sitting out here hitting that refresh button on our computer screens, waiting for the next opinion to come down.
Okay, so it seems like we're still waiting on one. I guess I'll go over this real quick. One of the good things that happened at the very least is that SCOTUS rules on Trump's birthright citizenship order, transgender athletes. Okay, so one of the good things that came from this, birthright citizenship. The court rejected President Donald Trump's executive order ending citizenship at birth for those born on U.S. soil. The court ruled that the executive order ran foul of the Constitution's 14th Amendment, which has long been interpreted to bestow birthright citizenship on almost anyone born in the United States. Almost anyone. I thought it was anyone. I can't think of a single case where that doesn't apply. Okay, let's look at the other ones. Transgender athletes, we already know that one. Campaign finance. The justices also struck down longtime campaign finance rules challenged by Vice President J.D. Vance that place limits on how much a national political party committee can spend in coordination with individual candidates. So we're going to see a lot more spending on races because they're getting desperate, of course. Conservatives are getting desperate. Liberals are probably also getting desperate, but mostly conservatives. Anyway, I want to focus on the transgender rights thing. From Aaron Reed, who you should follow if you don't. Supreme Court rules Title IX means biological sex in devastating anti-trans ruling. The ruling will likely give the Trump administration more ammunition to go go after colleges and schools across the country. On June 30th, the last day of the term and the final day of Pride Month, the Supreme Court issued a 6-3 ruling that states may ban transgender athletes from women's and girls' sports, holding that Title IX permits schools to determine eligibility based upon biological sex. The ruling, authored by Justice Kavanaugh, was narrower than some of the worst-case scenarios. It preserved Bostock, did not what's Bostock? I have no idea what that is. Did not overtly strip transgender people of equal protection, and explicitly declined to decide whether states must exclude trans athletes. But in its most consequential holding, still has vast its most consequential holding still has vast consequences. The court declared that sex in Title IX cannot plausibly be interpreted to refer to anything other than biological sex. A definitional ruling about the statute itself, not merely about sports. And though the majority deliberately avoided saying that blue states must discriminate against transgender people under Title IX, its holding leaves wide lanes for the Trump administration to pressure schools and colleges through funding threats and investigations, and for far-right organizations like the Alliance Defending Freedom to file lawsuits targeting trans-inclusive policies in every state in the country. So basically, they have the Trump administration now has the green light to go after all kinds of things related to trans rights. Split along ideological lines, of course. The term sex and the Title IX regulations cannot plausibly be interpreted to refer to anything other than biological sex. This ruling overturns years of lower court precedent. The Fourth Circuit in Grimm versus Gloucester County has held that Title IX's prohibition on sex discrimination protects transgender students' rights to use the bathrooms and play sports matching their gender identity. The Seventh Circuit in Whitaker v. Kenosha Unified School District reached the same conclusion. Those rulings and the logic underlying them were foundational to school policies across the country protecting transgender students in both red and blue states. Let's be clear here. Like, this is just going to bully transgender children. This is only to bully transgender children, which is so useless to me. Like, what's the point of this other than just making trans people at least uncomfortable and at most bullied and oppressed? It doesn't accomplish anything. Ruling was not as sweeping as it could have been. The court specified two important limiting principles. The majority explicitly stated that it was not deciding whether states that choose to allow transgender athletes to participate are in violation of Title IX. Okay, so you can still have policies that protect trans athletes for now, at least. So at least we can have states that are like safe havens. The court declined to resolve whether transgender people as a class are entitled to heightened constitutional protection under the Equal Protection Clause. This was one of the potential worst-case scenarios, a ruling on the grounds that could have greenlit virtually any law targeting transgender people by declaring them undeserving of equal protection. Instead, the court analyzed the sports bans as sex-based classifications subject to intermediate scrutiny and found they satisfied that standard. The impact of this ruling will likely still be severe. So I won't read this whole thing. If you would like to read this for yourself, Aaron Reed does a very good job, much better than I do of covering this kind of stuff. But I just wanted to go over it because it pertains to my, personal interests as it regards LGBTQ rights and all that good stuff. I have trans friends. I have people in my life who I know who are trans, and this will affect them, most certainly. It's not good. States' rights to bully. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you live in any of those 27 states that already have those restrictions and you are trans, please take care of yourself and just look out for the worst. Prepare for the worst. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. Hi, thanks so much for watching and making it to the end of the video. I just wanted to let you all know that I love and appreciate everybody in my community, whether you can support me financially or just by liking, commenting, and sharing my videos. It helps way more than you know. That being said, I do want to give a very special thanks to my tier 4 subs, which would be Space Timid and Hot Take Andy. And thanks so much to my monetary subscribers from any of the tiered subs or anybody who gives me money in any form, including going to my Patreon shop, donating money to me directly. It all helps way more than you know. If you do decide to help me financially, you can get some really cool perks like early access to content, exclusive access to censored videos, also some really cool badges next to your name. Even if you can't afford a monetary subscription, just watching, sharing, and commenting on my content helps way more than you know. Thanks again, and I will see you all in the next video.